Yes, people, welcome back to Lead Judges TV. No lead judges tonight, so I'm your host, Dan Potts, but I'm with the wonderful Mr. Harry Simew. Harry, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. Pleasure to be here, and just want to say congrats on the great work that you guys have been doing. The channel is growing immensely, and you guys are doing some top quality stuff. So, well done to everyone involved.
I appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much, man. And everything going well with you over on the Chronicles of a Gooner, interviewing Mr. Alex Maninga the other night, mate. How was that?
Yeah, that was good fun. Thank you for the little plug. Yeah, it was good fun for me. I was that weird kid at school that wanted to see Alex Maninga play more than he did. That felt at times that he was too good to be a number two at Arsenal. So he was a bit of a cult hero for me. So it was a real pleasure to chat to him and get his thoughts on everything that's going on in the club at the moment, and of course his time back at Highbury.
Yeah, mate, I must admit, I was a huge fan. I think it's probably been, let's say, only the kind of maybe Meninga and Seaman are the two goalkeepers Arsenal have had where you thought we've got two good goalkeepers. I don't think we've ever had that since, if I'm honest with you. And I was really impressed with him. And obviously, you touched on the West Ham penalties, and you touched on the Man United game. And for me, that they were some of the best. So yeah, massive interview. If you haven't done so already, people, get yourself over to Chronicles of a Gooner, subscribe to Harry's channel and look at his content over there. Harry, we're going to get straight into it, mate. Let's talk transfers. The transfer window is shut, finally. I don't know about you, mate, but I found it very exhausting and very tiring, and I'm glad that it's all over. But give me a rundown of what you thought, what your thoughts are in terms of Arsenal's transfer window, mate.
So it's a hard one because on the one hand, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking at the very least, there was a strategy in place. I've seen a lot of pundits and a lot of sort of, ex-pros in the media over the last couple of days talking about how Arsenal's approach was very scattergun, how it was literally going out and just getting whoever was available. And I actually think that's complete and utter nonsense. I'm not saying that everything the club is doing, that the club have done is right. I'm not saying that everything they will do is necessarily going to be right. But I do think that there is a clear strategy at play here. And that strategy is to sign players of a certain age profile, players with the ability to develop, players who will retain sell-on value because of their age and could be sellable assets further down the line. And I think that Arsenal are looking to build a team that also fits in line with basically why Arsenal haven't pulled the trigger on Mikel Arteta yet. If you're willing to give the manager time, then you're clearly willing to adopt a transfer strategy that is of the same ilk. Now, again, I want to stress the point. I don't know that that is the right strategy. I don't know that it's going to be enough in the immediate future to see us, start competing with the size that we want to be competing with, to see us push up the table dramatically. So I am worried in that sense. But I do think at the very, very least, Dan, you have to say at least they have identified a group of players of a certain profile and they've gone and got them. They've invested. You can't say that they haven't invested. And only time will tell us if it's the right strategy or not. So I don't think you can lose your mind over it, but equally I understand why people have got reservations.
Can you understand why certain fans are a bit deflated with the business that Arteta and Edu have looked to do? Because I understand that there's a new model that they want to try and implement in terms of young crop of players, but there's nothing really exciting, Harry, was there?
No, there wasn't that marquee signing that made you kind of go, yes. We've all seen it as kids growing up. There's always been that signing here and there that really got you excited. And you got to say, Arsenal haven't made one of those this summer. There's no getting away from that. I think for me, when I look back at what went wrong last season, I do think a lot of our issues were off the back of us missing players at key times. And that's not to excuse Mikel Arteta, because as a manager, you're going to come across that and you have to deal with it. And you have to find the ways of accommodating that. But for example, Thomas Partey, who we all expected to come in and transform our midfield, £45 million signing, couldn't stay fit for more than 3-4 weeks on the trot. Kieran Tierney, one of our most important, not just defensive players, but attacking outlets, couldn't stay fit. I think one of the big problems we had in the Europa League in the latter stages was that when Kieran Tierney was injured, we didn't have another left back in the squad. We ended up putting Granit Xhaka there, which, isn't ideal, as well as weakening our midfield off the back of moving him out of it, because whatever you said about him and whatever you think about him, I'd still rather him in the team than some of the other options that we had at our disposal. So I think for us, strengthening the squad was important. It wasn't always just about changing the starting 11. Yes, we want to improve it and we want to enhance it. But I actually think we've done some decent business in terms of backfilling a lot of positions in which we were caught out on last season. But again, I always go back to that point. While I want to give Arsenal credit for having a strategy and then going out and making things happen that are in line with that, I still look at the players that we've brought in and I'm not sure if they're good enough to elevate us to the level that we need to get to now. And as someone said in the chat on one of the pods I did the other day, there is no future without the present. And that is so, so true. So, I know people will say in the chat that there's, waffle, etc., etc. And people think that I don't want to criticize Mikel Arteta. It's not that. I just think that we had to be shrewd in the transfer market with the players that we went and got. We had to adopt a different approach because the other approach has failed us for many, many years. And we don't have the sugar daddy owner that is going to pump the money in 1-2 summers that is going to get us up to the level where we're competing for the Premier League title. And therefore, we have to play the long game. This feels like we're playing the long game, but you don't know if it's going to actually lead to anywhere. And that's the big problem.
Fair play. 250 of you in the chat. It's just gone up to 260 now. Please smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Head over to Chronicles of a Gooner and do exactly the same thing. There's something wrong with my StreamYard. I can't see any comments. I don't know what is going on my end, but I do apologize, people. If you are putting any comments up, I'm not going to be able to put them up to show. There's a problem my end of the computer on StreamYard, so I do apologize. Harry, let's talk about these signings and break them down. Let's start from the back and go right the way forward, because I honestly still don't believe this starting 11 is anywhere near as bad as some people are making out. I definitely think there's holes in it. I definitely think there's weak links in it. However, I think as a starting 11, man for man, we have a better squad now than we did under Unai Emery, and I stand by that. And that Unai Emery side got 1 point off a top 4 and 2 Europa League finals. So I do believe that the squad is not the issue. The first 11 is not the issue. I was a little bit underwhelmed by some of the signings, but I totally agree that there are a couple of positions that have been strengthened in terms of strength of depth. So let's start with the goalkeeper, mate. Aaron Ramsdale. 2 questions. Are you okay with this signing? And do you think that he can challenge Bernd Leno?
I'm okay with the signing of Aaron Ramsdale. I'm not 100% okay with what we paid for him. That was my issue with that one all along. I looked at it and I went, well, you probably could have got another goalkeeper who was going to play second fiddle to Bernd Leno for half the price, maybe even on a free, maybe even on a loan, and essentially kick the can down the road with regards to the goalkeeping position, and then revisited it next summer when you were looking for someone who's going to be, someone sort of further, who could be that number one further down the line. But I think Arsenal have looked at Ramsdale. They've identified him as someone who they do feel can do that, can take the number 1 spot for many years to come. And they've decided it's worth the investment. Again, look, I don't recall watching that many games where Aaron Ramsdale played the entire 90 minutes. And I don't really recall sort of analysing his performance too much because I never, ever felt he was on our radar. So I was surprised that we were linked. I wasn't surprised that Arsenal made the move, but I was surprised that we agreed to pay that money. So, fingers crossed he does well and he does go on to challenge and push Bernd Leno, who needs to be challenged, needs to be pushed for sure. So I'm glad we got a keeper in. Not sure I would have spent £25 million though on Aaron Ramsdale, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't understand why we spent so much money on him when Onana was available for a lot cheaper. Sam Johnson probably would have been cheaper. And also, Matt Ryan, I think, would have happily been at Arsenal. He seemed quite happy to be, but I don't quite know what went on there. Maybe he did want to go and play first team for Real Sociedad. Do you think that he can push Leno, though? I mean, this is my thing with this one. Although I'm not massive on the signing, I think if that's who you're going to go for, then just play him. Because Leno doesn't want to be here, I don't think, long-term, Harry. He's made it quite clear he's not going to sign an extension. So what do we do in that position? Do we just keep Leno because he's the better keeper, or do we just give Ramsdale a year to develop?
I think you just pick them on merit. You just pick them based on who's performing, based on who's showing the most in training. When Ramsdale gets his opportunities, he's got to take them, just like any other kind of fringe player. But I do think that 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 Aaron Ramsdale is, as I mentioned, the one that they're looking at for the longer term. I think you're right. I don't think Bernd Leno stays beyond this season. I think he'll be moved on next summer. In which case, you kind of wouldn't be against allowing Ramsdale more game time and giving him that time to develop. The problem is, though, we need results now. Not 3-6 months down the line. And Mikel Arteta has to make the decision on which goalkeeper he feels is the best equipped now, today, to get us to where we need to be. Because I think throughout his managerial tenure, he has cut his nose off to spite his face with allowing experienced players, or being harsh and strict on experienced players, or players at least that had proven themselves more than some of the ones he regularly selects, because he didn't like other aspects. He didn't like their attitude. He didn't like their application in training. And for me, I think he's let himself down a little bit in that sense, where he's done that. So I think, yes, you have to look to the future. Yes, you have to give Ramsdale the opportunities. But I would say, for me, you got to do what's best for the team today. And that's really important now, especially given our current league position.
So if you were Mikel Arteta and you were looking at that, you'd play Leno?
No, I'd play Ramsdale, I think, honestly,
Yeah,
because
you would play Ramsdale.
I play Ramsdale because I don't think Leno gives us enough. I think Leno is a fantastic shot stopper. Leno, from time to time, will pull out incredible saves. The kind of which, was it the one against Chelsea, that save from the header?
Yeah,
I mean, he pulls out outstanding saves, but we look nervous when the ball goes back to him. He doesn't dominate his penalty area. He doesn't distribute well in the ball well enough. And I think all of those factors mean that I'd probably lean towards Aaron Ramsdale. But again, if you've got two goalkeepers competing, pushing each other, then that is how you get the best of both. And then you can make that decision. So it's healthy that the competition is there. Ramsdale might not be a complete goalkeeper now at this age, at this point in his career, but I think you've got to look at what they bring to the team, and you got to look at the defense and how the defense respond to them, because I think Bernd Leno makes us nervous. I really do.
Having that in mind, then, before we move on from the goalkeeping situation, how frustrating is it that what you're asking to happen is two goalkeepers fight for the goalkeeper gloves? We already had that with Emi Martinez and Bernd Leno, and I think now it just proves how bad business that was, letting him go. And I know fans have gone over the top with it and in meltdown about it, and it's frustrating that I have to keep bringing it up. But that was a big mistake, Harry, weren't it, letting Martinez go?
It felt like him. It feels like a mistake now, for sure. What I will say, what I will say is this: for some work I was doing, I sat in on an interview with Emi Martinez, and it was for a publication in Argentina, and somebody I knew was doing the interview and offered me the opportunity to sit in on it. I didn't ask him any questions myself. But what I gauged from it was that actually Emi Martinez was quite key in pushing that through. He didn't want to be told you're going to compete with Bernd Leno. He wanted to be told you are my number one. And Mikel Arteta couldn't guarantee him that. And to be fair, as much as it looks as a bit of a mistake now, what you have to say is Martinez had done well for 10 games and Bernd Leno had done well for 18 months before that. You can understand, can't you, surely, why the manager didn't feel like he could say to Emi Martinez, you are my undisputed number one at that point. I think that's fair. I think the offer came in, and obviously this is going to happen. When you sell players, you will sometimes look back and say, maybe it was a mistake. But for me, it's a forgivable mistake, if that makes sense, because I don't think there's that much difference between the two. I think Emi Martinez has made mistakes at Aston Villa. I think, if you really analyze his performances, which obviously we don't do as much no more because we're not watching Villa every week, you will find faults in it and you will find shortcomings. So it was a mistake. I think you can be fair and say that. But I don't think it was an unforgivable mistake. I don't think it was the biggest mistake that we've made since Mikel Arteta has taken charge. And Emi Martinez was pushing for it. So it kind of is what it is.
It is what it is indeed. And I do think it's a mistake. And what I would have loved to have seen happen is Emi Martinez keep the number one goalkeeping gloves and Leno fights for his place. Let's move on, mate. Kieran Tierney had a lot of injury problems, Harry, last season, and we had so many people having to play there. Cedric, Maitland-Niles, Saka, Granit Xhaka. Obviously, Kolasinac has not been able to find a new club, which I hope that changes in the next few days, because obviously some of the other leagues are still open. There's rumours about El Neni and Kolasinac moving to Turkey, but we have got Nuno Tavares, or Nuno Tavares, as people like to call it, and try and be foreign. I'm an Essex boy, so I call it Nuno Tavares.
You're about as bad as Lee Judges, isn't you, with the pronunciations?
I'm not quite as bad as him, mate. Jesus. But you know what? I'm okay with this signing, Harry, because from what I've seen of him, I just like how he goes about things. I thought at West Brom he looked really sharp, lively. When he's made substitute appearances, he goes at players. He looks like he's got some flair and some kind of what's the word, tenacity about him. So, what do you make of this signing? Because I'm quite all right with it.
Yeah, smart signing for me. When you look at the fee, it was a nominal fee. You're looking at about £8-9 million, which isn't isn't a lot of money when you're talking about when you're talking about someone in this day and age in football. So there's that. The fee was fine, and I think we had a choice, didn't we? We had an option. You either go out and you bring in a seasoned left back. People were talking about Ryan Bertrand, weren't they? You either go out and you buy a seasoned left back who's at the back end of his career and who is going to backfill that position. At that point in his career, is going to want a massive salary, but kind of is not a long-term fix. And I think when we are going for a rebuild, which whether you agree with it or not, again, is what Arsenal are clearly trying to do, I think you go out and you get someone who has the raw potential. And Nuno Tavares certainly has that. As you mentioned, he's quick, he's strong, he's physical. He feels like he's cut out for the Premier League. But there are a few things that need tweaking. There are a few things that need kind of refining. And so I think at that price, given the raw talents and the raw attributes that he clearly has, I think this was a good signing. And it was one we needed, because the left back position, as I mentioned earlier, was an area we fell short in last season because we couldn't cope with Kieran Tierney's absence. So yeah, pleased with that one.
Yeah, likewise. And I think he will go on to be an absolutely 100% upgrade on Sead Kolasinac, a player I do not rate, as you know, Harry. Okay, let's move over to the other side of defence. We've obviously got this guy in on deadline day. Don't know much about him, Harry. I don't know if you do. A signing from Bologna. Right back who can also play centre back. Quite tall, apparently, but very, very technically gifted, some have said, in Tomiyasu. What do you make of this signing? Do you know much about him? Romano was talking to Robbie Lyle, saying how impressed he was with him, Serie A Defender of the Year or whatever it be. But let's remember that Kolasinac was the left back of the year in Germany. So let's not get too excited just yet, mate. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, quite pleased with this one. Takahiro Tomiyasu is a player who had a pretty decent reputation in Italy. As you know, I'm massive on my Italian football, do a lot of work around it. And he was a player that was on my radar. I'm not going to say that I thought Arsenal would sign him. I know he was heavily linked with a move to Spurs actually earlier in the transfer window, and it looked like that deal was going to happen. But Bologna are very good traditionally at picking up players from overseas. They picked him up from a Belgian club after he moved from Japan, and what they normally do is they bring these players in from abroad. They nurture the talent, they get them to a certain level, and then they normally look to cash in. And this is exactly what they've done with Tomiyasu. He's a really versatile defender in that he can play right back, he can play right centre back. He's also played a lot of games for Bologna on the left side of a back three as well, which is strange because he's right-footed, but he does that quite a bit. So, fair play. He's someone that fits the bill in that sense. He gives Mikel Arteta options, I think. But the most important thing is he's definitely an upgrade on Bellerin. Now he's definitely an upgrade on Cedric. He's definitely an upgrade on Callum Chambers in the right back position. So it's a good signing. Again, it's not a crazy fee. I think, a lot of Arsenal fans have gone, we just decided to sign him on deadline day because there was nothing else going, which is a little bit unfair. People not necessarily buying that Arsenal were looking at him. I had heard previously that Arsenal were looking at him. So this wasn't a link that came completely out of the blue. And is someone that, as they say, they have been looking at. So fingers crossed he can do the business.
Yeah, I don't know much about him, and I'm not going to judge him or say that it's a poor or a great signing because I know absolutely nothing about the guy. So it would be foolish of me to say that. I think I would have preferred a Max Aarons, if I'm honest with you, because I think that he's been linked to our club. He's young. He fits this model that they are trying to implement. And I think that when you look at what he's done for Norwich in the last few years, I think it's been quite exciting. So I would have preferred that signing, but he probably would have cost 30 to 40 million as opposed to 20 million. So we obviously, I don't know what money we got, Harry. I haven't got a bloody clue, if I'm honest with you. We spent 150 million, but it looks like we haven't really improved much of the first team, to be honest with you. But one position we did improve upon, or at least sign a player from, and spent a lot of money on, is Ben White. Now, I listened to Luke Shaw and Bukayo Saka in their interview for England, and they were asked, what's the one player, or who is the one player that's impressed you the most in the England camp? And they both said Ben White. And I think it's not so much his mentality they were impressed with, but they were actually impressed with his technical ability on the ball. Now, I think on the ball, he's actually very good. My worry against Brentford was how poor he was at losing kind of the fight, so to speak, but also in the air, he did not look great at all. So do you think this is a good signing? Is it an upgrade on David Luiz? And how happy are you with it, mate?
Happy with it because I think he's got potential. I think he's one for the future, certainly. I think he's one that could be part of the Arsenal side, for many, many years to come. I'm a little bit worried about, like you said, the physical side of the game. He's obviously had a few problems there. He looked quite troubled against Brentford. What I would say is judge him next to Gabriel, though, because I think Gabriel, with his physicality, his speed across the ground, probably makes up for a lot of what Ben White misses in that. And if I had to pick a criticism of Gabriel, I'd say I don't think he progresses the ball well enough. So I think the combination could be a good combination, and I'm really excited to see how they're going to get on together. I think when you put Ben White next to Pablo Mari, as we did in that game against Brentford, and then you fail to drop an extra man back with Brentford launching the ball forward and having two centre forwards and it having to be 1-for-1, it just didn't work. Ben White is someone that needs to be the spare man, needs to drop off, needs to read the game, needs to bring the ball out of the defence and start play off. Those are the things that he's good at. So I can see why Arsenal went for him as a replacement for David Luiz, because a lot of his attributes are the same. But if you're asking me if he's an upgrade on David Luiz of last season, it's hard to say that he is at this moment in time. I think David Luiz is a lot more streetwise. I think David Luiz was a lot better physically. I think David Luiz would win the aerial duels more often than not. So, yeah, look, I think it's one of those where it's a good signing for the long term. But like you said, we keep looking at this transfer window. And as I've said throughout, because people always say that I'm defending the club. I've always said that I don't know that we've done enough in this transfer window to close that gap. And I genuinely feel like that. It's a signing I like, but I don't know if it was worth £50 million. When you think that Liverpool went and got a ready-made centre-half from the Bundesliga for kind of similar money, you feel like we could have done something like that as well.
Yeah, and I would have rather seen that 50 million given to Brighton for Bissouma. I really would. I think that was a position that we needed to upgrade, and that would have been priority. And I kind of ballsed up the other night on AFTV when I was asked for my rating of the window. And I kind of, as you do on live TV, sometimes slip up. But I kind of wanted to say that if Bissouma and a striker came in, I really believe this window would have been a 7 or 8 out of 10. But I kind of rated it 7 or 8 out of 10 before I even mentioned Bissouma and Calvert-Lewin. So I basically slated the window in the stream and then rated it 7 or 8 out of 10. But that happens on live TV, Harry, as you know.
Yeah, it does.
And then you can't get out of it. You're like, oh no,
no. And people on YouTube will hold it against you until you're on your deathbed, which is ridiculous. And also people.
That's happened.
And also what they'll do is they'll pick one element of what you said and keep repeating it to you for the next 10 years. So yeah, just beware of that.
Well, that's what I'm going to get. I've got loads of stick for it. But I think people who know me and listen to me for long enough realize that I don't think this window was a 7 or 8 out of 10. But anyway, so let's be real though. These 4 positions, as much as I'm not excited by them, none of them are like wow signings. I think they've probably been an upgrade on what we already had there. Is that fair to say, Harry? Do you know what I mean? Because Tavares is an upgrade on Kolasinac. Ramsdale's an upgrade on Runnison. I think Ben White's an upgrade on Rob Holding. And I think Tomiyasu is an upgrade on Bellerin. Is that fair to say, or is that over the top?
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that we've upgraded. But the problem is that we've upgraded squad players, not necessarily first team players in a lot of those areas. I think when you look at the way we've started this season, I know there's been a lot of criticism and rightly so for many aspects of of what we've seen as fans. But you've also got to think as well that when we play the game against Norwich, with everyone hopefully all being fit and available, we're actually going to have a back four where 3 of the 4 players are different to the ones that we've been playing with, and that makes a massive difference, doesn't it? So if you can't be optimistic that things are going to get a little bit better with those players coming in, then what is the point? You've got to see how it goes for sure. But yeah, I think we've bought, as I said before, I think our first 11 last season, when everyone was available, wasn't bad. I think that we just never managed to cope with the players that we were missing at the times we were missing them. And I think so for me to be able to say that we've got players now in those positions that you can, even if they're not necessarily starters, call upon to come into the side and enhance it in comparison to what we saw last season. I think it's a move forward. Is it enough of a move forward though? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, listen, I think you. I don't want to be too harsh on the manager here, but I don't feel like it matters who we bring in. So that's why I'm not too excited or deflated either way about the window, because I still don't feel that even with Messi, Ronaldo and Neymar, we get anywhere with this manager, because I don't like the style of football or the lack of style of football. And I just don't think that the guy is cut out for the job, and I think he's out of his depth. So it doesn't really bother me that the window's not been that exciting, because I wouldn't have even been excited with some of the players anyway, because I just don't think the manager's got it. The good thing about it, though, Harry, is I do think some of them are good players, and I think that we will see if Arteta does get the sack, because I do think he will eventually, whether it's in 6 games or 6 days. I think that he will get the sack. So I think that the new manager who comes in will still have some good players to work with. Let's move forward into the midfield, because I think this is probably the best signing for me, and it's Lokonga. From what I've seen against Brentford and against Chelsea, he looks like a bright spark. He's clearly got the mentality because he was the captain of Anderlecht. I think he looks nice on the ball, and he looks to play it forward, which is something your friend Granit Xhaka sometimes does not always do. So what do you make of Lokonga, and do you see him as someone who can get into this first team, or do you think he's a backup?
I think he was brought in with a view to being a backup. I think he was brought in with a view to being someone who would backfill the first team from time to time, but that the club were quite happy to give a season to in terms of settling down. I think that was the initial idea. That was the initial plan. It's a bit like when we signed Guendouzi, Dan. I know Guendouzi was cheaper, but if you remember when he came in, it was kind of like, well, this guy could play in the first team, but he's more likely to be a backup. And then his performances and kind of the circumstances meant that he got more game time than we expected. And I wonder if we might see something similar with Lokonga. As I say, I think he was brought in with a view to developing and to being a future fixture in that midfield. But, he's impressed so far. I think he's done really well. I think he looks incredibly composed on the ball, progresses the ball well. I think he is, in many ways, what we've been missing in our midfield in recent years. But I'm just wary and conscious of putting too much pressure on the young lad. Because this is a completely different ball game. I know people talked about him being the skipper at Anderlecht and all that, and of course, that's valuable experience. But Anderlecht, Arsenal, it's not the same world, and I think that we got to be patient with him, to be honest. And but there's no reason why, if we're not patient with him, and if he grasps the opportunities when they come his way, that he can't go on to be a great signing. Again, we're talking about 20 odd million pounds for a young player. It feels like a lot on the surface, but when you think about the potential he has, he's actually not that crazy. And a lot of the time when you are signing players, you are signing potential, aren't you? So it's again, I agree with you. It's probably one of my favorite of the deals that we've done this summer.
Yeah, listen, every signing's risky, even if you think that it's going to be a world beater. Every signing's risky, but something about this kid I liked as soon as I saw him on the ball. And I think it was because he was trying to be positive on the football. We haven't always seen that in the Arsenal midfield with Xhaka and El Neni. So I would prefer to see Lokonga start alongside Partey, but we just know that if Arteta is going to be our manager, then Granit Xhaka is going to be on that team sheet. Mate, let's just quickly touch on it. I know me and you are going to disagree about this one, but were you happy that we kept Granit Xhaka? And before you say yes, because we weren't going to replace him, do you think that if he was sold, we could have replaced him with someone better?
I don't think we needed to give him the new contract. I think that was unnecessary. I also see why they did it, or get why they did it, or at least try to understand why they did it. But I think for me, what's been really frustrating about the start of the season, I know a lot of people have kind of got on the whole, let's give Granit Xhaka a load of crap stuff again off the back of that sending off against Man City. I've got to be honest, that is not even my concern. You know, challenges like that, they happen in football matches. I think we saw challenges that were just as bad, if not worse, in the Premier League during the weekend that went completely unpunished. We saw Manchester United score a goal off of the back of one. So for me, you know, I think that he was a little bit hard done by there. That's neither here nor there. He still shouldn't make the challenge. But first of all, I don't think 12 million was enough, what Roma were offering. I think that was an insult. I think that would have been stupid to let him go for 12 million when you consider how much we were going to have to fork out to replace him. But what I've been really frustrated about is this. We have started the season asking our midfield to press high up the pitch. We did it against Brentford, we did it against Chelsea, and we did it against Manchester City. If you were going to ask Granit Xhaka to push high up the pitch, then you shouldn't have kept him because he can't do that. We know that. We know that a lack of mobility is his biggest problem. You know, when he sits in front of a back four the way he did last season and he drops into the defense when necessary and he starts the play moving from there, I think he does okay. And I think he did okay last season. I would argue it was his best season in an Arsenal shirt. But if the remit has changed, if what Mikel is asking from his midfield has changed in terms of pushing them higher up the pitch, trying to put people under pressure, squeeze teams up, it was wrong to keep him because he can't play that way. And you're going to see him exposed week after week after week if that is what we choose to do. So my view on whether we should have kept him or not is dependent on how Mikel Arteta wants to utilize him. And based on what I've seen in the first few weeks, and it seems that we're moving in that direction, then it was the wrong decision, you have to say.
Yeah, again, it goes down to the manager again. You know, he was already pretty much saying his goodbyes to go to Roma. Before that, he was saying his goodbyes to go to Hertha Berlin. This manager has begged him to stay, and I can't understand why we can't just let this guy go and have a career somewhere else. He's tried it for 5 years in the league. It hasn't worked out. Relationship with the fans is bad, and I think it will continue to be bad if he keeps getting sent off and making stupid mistakes like I believe he will do because he's done that every single season for the last 5 years. I'd have taken the 18 million, Harry. I know it was a lot. I know it was some were saying it was a woeful offer, but I would have just taken that, get rid of him, and then put that towards a Basuma or somebody else before you start signing the other players we did, just to get somebody in there that's an upgrade on Granit Xhaka. My problem is, Harry, this midfield is paper thin because Thomas Partey and El Neni will go to Africa. It leaves us with Xhaka and Lokonga. Miguel Aziz has gone out on loan. And obviously he's young anyway. So are we going to have to get someone else in January, do you think, in that midfield?
I think we might have to. I agree with you that it's really thin. There's reports saying that Arsenal have done a bit of a U-turn on Ainsley Maitland-Niles and that he'll get given the opportunity. Played there today in the behind closed doors friendly against Brentford. So I do wonder if he will get those opportunities and if Arsenal see him as that player. But remember, he wasn't seen as that player until all this nonsense with him going on Instagram and all that, which shows a lack of planning, doesn't it? I don't know, man. I do think we're thin in that position. I think we're always just one or two injuries away from having a really bad midfield. And that worries me. I think it's the most important part of the pitch. And, you know, that's one of the criticisms I would throw at Mikel Arteta. He's never really dealt with that area. Maybe he thought he did when he signed Thomas Partey, but then I don't think he reacted well enough to, you know, the way Thomas Partey's season went last season. And I think to go into this one and be so heavily reliant on Thomas Partey again, after what we saw with his fitness, is a massive gamble and a massive risk and one that he's going to live and die by, really.
No, absolutely, 100%. Listen, there's a super chat that's come in. I've got so many issues my end. I don't understand what's happening with my computer, but it's from 2 points dropped. Thank you so much for your kind donation. It says that Arteta said when he joined, we'll be in the Champions League within 3 years. We've never looked further from a Champions League team than now. Thanks so much for your kind donation. 2 points dropped. We're going to get into that very, very soon after we talk about our last player that's come in, because we're going to go into what Arteta's future looks like. So thank you so much for your kind donation and stay tuned because we are going to bring that up right after we talk about Martin Odegaard, Harry. He's come in and was a player that we had last season. Do you think it's fair to judge Martin Odegaard on what he's already done at Arsenal as to what he's going to potentially do at the club? Or do you think it gets kind of a free slate for you now moving forward?
Yeah, I guess you can wipe the slate clean. I think we got a little bit of a preview, a little bit of a glimpse of what Martin Odegaard is all about. I think he links play up really well. I thought he was really good against West Brom. I know, they're West Brom and it was their second string, so I don't want to read too much into that, but I thought he performed really well. And I thought you saw what it is that he brings to the side that maybe some of our other midfield options lack. I think he is different to Emil Smith-Rowe. I think he releases the ball a lot quicker. He receives the ball on the turn and then looks to release players a lot quicker than Smith-Rowe does, who is a better carrier of the ball, I would say. So I think they're a little bit different in that sense. I think for me, £30 million is a reasonable fee for Martin Odegaard. Again, you're talking about a 22-year-old. Again, you're talking about a player with massive potential. And you're talking about someone who doesn't need to necessarily go through that settling in period because he's already had it. I think some of the judgments on Martin Odegaard last season were a little bit harsh. It was an underperforming team. It was really difficult for him to come in at the end of January. I think it was the 27th of January he signed, having not played any football that season, and then get himself up to speed really quickly to be available. And I thought his form was really picking up prior to that injury he got on international duty. So I'm hopeful this one will turn out well. I maintained throughout the summer that he was someone Arsenal were going to buy if the opportunity came up. And, Real Madrid, despite playing hardball at the beginning, ended up crumbling and allowing him to leave for a reasonable price, and Arsenal cashed in. I think this is a good signing. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him.
I think he's very different to Smith-Rowe. I think you're bang on. I think Smith-Rowe carries the ball. I think Odegaard is a lot more technically gifted, believe it or not. I think he's got that little bit of a trick or flick in him. We saw it against West Brom, didn't we? The Xhaka goal. Yeah. He just did that little flick where he's just like one step ahead. So I think he's an intelligent footballer. What worries me is his stats weren't amazing for Arsenal last season. But like you say, he did have a lot of time out of the team. I just don't get excited by this signing. I really would have liked to have seen the links with James Maddison come true, because although, let's be honest, his stats aren't outstanding, I think this signing is massive. James Maddison, I'm a massive fan of him, and I think he's another player that I think I would have liked to have seen to take us to that kind of marquee signing. But Odegaard's come in, and it has strengthened that position because we did need somebody in there. I know Smith-Rowe is a very good player, but he can't do it all on his own. We have kept some players, Harry, that I thought might have actually left the club. Eddie and Nketiah, Lacazette, Chambers and Elneny all coming into the last year of their contract. Bellerin and Kolasinac not able to get out of the door with a fee, just a loan for Bellerin. Reece Nelson on loan was fine by me. I accepted that was going to probably happen. Anything that you were disappointed with in terms of outgoings, mate?
I was disappointed that so many of them were on loan deals, if I'm honest, when you look at the players we moved out. But some of them are loan deals with options to buy, with triggers that are quite easily triggered. So I know that's the case with Mavropanos. I know that's probably the case with Matteo Guendouzi as well. So we will get money in for those players, but it will be next summer. And really, if we're being honest, it's not enough money, which is a little bit frustrating. The Bellerin thing, I wasn't surprised that Arsenal let him leave at the end of the window on a loan deal. I'd said on one of my podcasts really early on in the summer that because the goodwill he had with the club, because he was instrumental in getting that pay cut agreed amongst the group of players, that I felt if the right offer didn't come in, Arsenal would give the player what he wanted in terms of compromising and letting him go to somebody like Real Betis on a loan deal. So I'm not surprised that happened, but it obviously is a little bit disappointing because when you went into the summer and you looked at what Bellerin has done in the past and where he is in his career, I'm not saying we've got loads of sellable assets, but I did feel he was one of them that we could have got some money for, and we didn't. And that was obviously really, really disappointing. But just before we move on, Dan, there was something I just wanted to mention. Sure. We were talking, you mentioned in passing earlier that, that Unai Emery, had a weaker squad and stuff. And I did a podcast earlier on today where I compared Unai Emery and Mikel Arteta's times, and I tried to kind of come to a conclusion as to who it was that had the bigger task. And I think what a lot of people seem to overlook about the time under Unai Emery, and when you're comparing that squad to this one, is the number of goals and assists that players contributed all around the team. I think, and I've got the stats in front of me because I was looking at it earlier, but first of all, Aubameyang scored 31 goals. That's in Emery's full season, which is more than double what he scored in Mikel Arteta's first full season. Aaron Ramsey contributed 6 goals that season, 8 assists. Mkhitaryan even 6 goals, 7 assists. Torreira got 5 assists and 2 goals. Bellerin 5 assists. Iwobi 6 goals, 9 assists. Welbeck got 5 goals. Ozil got 6 goals with 5 assists. And so for me, actually, when you compare that to Bukayo Saka, who only scored 1 goal more than Alex Iwobi last season, in comparison to Iwobi's season under Emery. You look at Emile Smith-Rowe, only 4 goals. Martin Odegaard, 2. Danny Ceballos got none. Joe Willock got 3 in all competitions. So actually, I think that squad was better in terms of outputs. It's partly down to Emery's game being a little bit more expansive, and being more open and being more attack-minded. But I just think when we look at this squad that we've got now, I just think it's suicide to walk into a season relying on Emile Smith-Rowe, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard to contribute enough goal-wise to take you up to that next level. I really do. And that's my big worry about this season. I think some of the deals we've done have been okay and have been decent, but do they take us up to that next level? And we were laughing at Iwobi. We were laughing at Mkhitaryan. We all said, a lot of us said, oh, it doesn't matter that Aaron Ramsey's leaving. We've never replaced those goals. We've never replaced those assists. And when it comes to outputs, those players were on a different level in comparison to where these guys are at this stage in their career. And I think that's really worth noting.
I think it's worth noting where I disagree with you is the style of footballs are completely different. So obviously you touched on it that Emery was a lot more expansive. He was a lot more attractive to watch, man. Unai Emery. Although we would concede a couple, we definitely scored 2 or 3.
Agreed.
We scored 5 against Fulham. We scored 4s against Leicester's. We've scored 3s against Norwich's. When you look at it, you think, do you know what? Mikel Arteta, the reason we are not scoring goals, I believe, is because the style of football has been so negative. And I think it's been very unattractive as well. So I would disagree that the Iwobis and the other players mentioned, like Mkhitaryan, are better than Saka and Smith-Rowe in terms of output. But I would say that if Unai Emery or somebody else, whoever it be, that was more attacking minded. Let's say Arsene Wenger. If Arsene Wenger was in charge, I do believe Saka and Smith-Rowe would score a lot more because that style of football is so attractive. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Mikel Arteta's is a lot more kind of worrying. It's more like, don't concede. It's kind of scared, if you get me. That's what I believe anyway. So it'll be interesting to see, won't it? Let's talk about Mikel for the last couple of minutes because I know you've got to shoot off soon. How long's he got, Harry, with this team? This is his team now. No more excuses. I don't want to hear anything more about we should be giving this guy more transfer windows. We need to give him more time. How long has he got, in your opinion, to try and save his career? Because let's be honest, the pressure is on, mate.
Yeah, the pressure's massively on. And he hasn't got long. It's as simple as that. People will talk about sort of giving him, till the end of the season. I don't know. For me, it's a really tough one. I think you've got to judge it.
Well, you said to me, didn't you, that 6 games was too little? You said that to me right at the start of the season. Do you still stick by that?
Yeah, I do think 6 games is not enough to gauge where you are over the course of the whole season. And I still think 6 games is not enough when you consider that for 3 games, we've had a lot of key players missing. So that's why when I said that 6 games was not enough, it's because I don't think you can ever make judgments unless you have the full picture in front of you. Unless you can see everything, then it's really hard to make calls. And there are things that are out of a manager's control that can dictate circumstances, that can dictate results. You could have players missing, which we have had. You could have you could play really well, concede a dodgy penalty in the last minute. VAR steps in, messes it right up, and you end up losing the game. So I think you need to really sort of analyze it deeply. And that's why I just think 6 games is not a big enough sample to decide whether we're better than we were last season or not. But equally, there is a real need for results. And as I've always said, if he doesn't get a result against Norwich and I woke up the next morning and he was sacked, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be crying about it. I wouldn't be, saying it was the biggest injustice in football, because this has been building for a long time. But I just find it, and people often mistake what I'm saying. They say, when I say I think the club are going to give him to Christmas, people take it as though I'm saying I would give him till Christmas, which is not what I've said. I said that if you're trying to work out when you think he's going to go, Christmas feels like a good point to check in and see where we are. And that's my issue. That's my issue. People will take what you think the club is going to do and pass it off as your own opinion, which is it's not my opinion. If he doesn't get 3 wins or 2 wins from the next 2 at least, then he's seriously under threat, because we really do need to pick up results, and quickly, because we are falling further and further behind all the time. I think if you're being sensible, if you're being rational, you give it longer than 6 games. But we're fans of the club, and sometimes the passion and the frustration takes over. But we're not the people at the top. We're not the people making that call. So I think the club will give him till Christmas. That's what I think they'll do. I can't answer that question, because for me, I will know when there's a breaking point in my own mind. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm not far from it.
Well, I have been there for a long time, mate, and I've wanted this manager out a long, long time. So for me, it's the next loss. You lose to Norwich, you're gone, mate. But what's going to happen is they're going to stick with this guy. I honestly believe that, because they've just allowed for 150 million to be spent on players that he wants. So I have a real bad worry and fear that this guy's going to be here past Christmas, whatever happens. Because I think, Harry, the Cronkies are sat there, the ownership is sat there, the board are sat there and thought, we're out of Europe. Doesn't matter if we're out of Europe again. This guy's getting the players he wants to build a young team, and we're going to stick by him. And that's what it's sounding like to me at the moment. And that is so, so worrying, which is why I've all the time been pointing the fingers at these owners. This ownership put him in charge. This ownership put this board in charge, and they allowed Arteta to work with Edu to get the players that they believe they wanted in. And it looks like they're going to trust him, whatever. I think that if he was going to be sacked, he would have been sacked after the Villarreal result, and he wasn't. So that means they're going to stick with him for a little bit longer. And I hope it isn't much longer, because I can't watch this much more. I really can't. Massive shout out to Richard Lafleur in the chat. Very, very kind donation. Thank you very much, Richard. He says, I love you two guys together. I love both of your content individually, but together the chemistry is brilliant. Richard, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. That's a great, great compliment for both myself and Harry. So I think that's what's going to happen. We're stuck with him until we start to see this crowd become very toxic. And trust me, Harry, this crowd can become very, very toxic at the Emirates and away from home if results don't go our way. Mikel Arteta has got to start winning if he wants to stay here, in my opinion, long term.
He does. He does. And that's the thing. Again, I'm not saying that he should be given till Christmas. I'm saying that I think that's what the club will do. I don't see a world, unfortunately, where Stan Kroenke and KSE have invested this money, and people say it's not them that's invested it, it's come from the club. Whose football club is it? It's theirs. They own it. When my business, my company that I own, buys something, it's me that's buying it, because it's my business. There aren't shareholders. I'm the sole owner. Therefore, when that company buys something, I'm buying something, because it's my company. And that's the same with the Cronkies. I just don't see a place where they've put all that money in and then they're going to pull the trigger or pull the plug after 6 games. It's not that I think that that's right. I don't. If we don't beat Norwich at home and we go and get beaten at Burnley, that's shocking. And I can completely understand people chopping him and wanting to see him chop. But I'm just trying to be realistic about what we're expecting here. Because if you're thinking he's going to get sacked like tomorrow, then you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry. I just think that the club will give it that little bit longer. I'm not necessarily saying that's right. But as I say, for me, when I get to that breaking point, I will know. I think there are certain triggers in a manager's career or in a manager's tenure where you as a fan are broken and you feel it. And I felt it with Emery at a certain point. And I think we'll get to that point with Mikel Arteta quite soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I already am there and have been there for a long time. Before we do wrap this up, there's over 600 of you watching live in the chat. Thank you so much. Apologies, it's not been as interactive tonight. I've had IT issues. If you could all do me a massive favour, though, go over and like and subscribe to the Chronicles of a Gooner, Harry's channel. And please make sure before you do that, whack a like on this video and hit a subscribe. We're going to be providing a lot of content, myself and Lee. So it's only going to get bigger and better for you guys. So please make sure that you stay tuned. Harry, before I let you go, mate, Norwich, Burnley and Spurs, how many points are you predicting, mate?
What am I predicting, or what do I want?
Well, I think you want 9, but what are you predicting?
Yeah, I want 9. I'd take 7. but only if that 1 point comes in the North London derby. I'm not going to accept anything other than wins against Norwich and Burnley. What am I predicting? I think we'll probably get the 7. I think that the return of some of those players is going to actually improve us significantly. I think we couldn't have really asked for a better fixture going back at home to Norwich. That might be famous last words, but it feels like the right kind of fixture to get back to winning ways. And so, yeah, I think we'll get 7. I think we'll get 7.
Okay, I'm only going to accept 9. Otherwise, I want him gone. And I am going to predict that we're going to take 5. I think we'll beat Norwich because I think that they are a team that are struggling. But I think we'll draw against Burnley and Spurs. And I think that still is enough for me to just getting 5 points in 6 games is relegation form. So we're going to have to say goodbye to Mikel Arteta. Harry, give a massive shout out to how people can follow you, mate, before we let you go.
Yeah, check out the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. It's part of the 90 Min Football Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Harry Simu as well. I'm getting a bit of stick in the chat, so if you don't want to follow, that's cool as well. But yeah, for those that do, there you go. Cheers.
I can't see. Stop being out of order in the chat. I can't see.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Good man. Harry, thanks so much, mate. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for joining, both myself and Harry. Let's hope that this international break gives us a little bit of a break from Arsenal Football Club and that we can actually try to enjoy it when it comes back. Until then, we'll see you next time, guys.